Rachel did not want to be the kind of wife who begged to be loved. She did not want to count the months between touches, rehearse conversations in the mirror, or lie awake beside her husband, wondering if the problem was her body, his heart, or something neither one of them had the courage to say out loud. For 6 years, Marcus had reasons. Some sounded medical, some sounded reasonable, some even sounded believable enough for Rachel to keep trying. But after a while, even the most patient woman starts to recognize the difference between a struggle and a secret. And by the time Rachel finally heard the truth, she was no longer asking whether her marriage could survive. She was asking whether she could survive being loved this way. The first time Rachel heard Marcus tell the truth, she did not cry. That was the part that scared her. She had cried in the shower, cried in the car, cried in the pantry with the light off because she did not want anybody to hear her breathing unevenly through another disappointment. She had cried into pillows and paper towels and once, shamefully, into a basket of clean laundry because she had been folding his t-shirts and the smell of his cologne felt like an insult. But that day, sitting in the counselor's office, with a box of tissues between them and Marcus staring at the carpet like the carpet had asked him the question, Rachel felt nothing. Not peace, not anger, nothing. Just a strange, hollow quiet. The counselor, Miss Anita, leaned forward in her chair. "Marcus," she said gently, "this is an emergency session because something broke open this week. Rachel is not asking for perfection. She is asking for honesty. So I'm going to ask you plainly. Have you continued watching pornography since the last session?" Marcus rubbed both hands over his face. Rachel looked at his wedding ring, not his eyes, his ring. It was easier to look at the symbol than the man. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then swallowed hard. "Yes," he said. Rachel blinked once. Miss Anita did not move. "How often?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "I don't know." Rachel let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. Marcus looked over at her, then away again. "You know," she said, "don't do that. Not today." The room went still. Marcus pressed his palms against his knees. "Almost every day," he said. And there it was. 6 years of turned backs. 6 years of excuses. 6 years of Rachel wondering if her body had changed too much, if her face had lost something, if her husband secretly wanted someone else, if he wanted men, if he never wanted her at all. 6 years of sleeping beside a man who reached for his phone more easily than he reached for her. Almost every day. Ms. Anita's voice stayed calm. "Are you trying to stop?" Marcus stared at the carpet again. Rachel could hear the air conditioner humming in the corner. She could hear someone laughing faintly in the hallway. She could hear her own heartbeat, slow and heavy, like it was walking away from something. Marcus whispered, "Not really." That was the sentence that changed the room. Not really. Not, "I'm struggling." Not, "I relapsed." Not, "I need help." Not really. Rachel sat back in the chair and looked toward the window. Outside, traffic moved like nothing had happened. People were still getting groceries, still answering emails, still picking children up from school. The world did not stop just because a marriage cracked in half. That felt unfair to her. Because something inside her had stopped. 6 years earlier, Rachel married Marcus in a small ceremony with ivory flowers, gold chairs, and a playlist she had organized down to the minute. That was Rachel. Organized, ambitious, practical, strong in a way people praised because they did not understand the cost of being that kind of woman. She wore multiple hats before breakfast. She handled spreadsheets, church calendars, family birthdays, business ideas, grocery lists, and emergencies that were not even hers. People called her dependable. Marcus called her a lot. At first, she thought he meant it playfully. "You're a lot, Rachel," he would say, smiling while she labeled storage bins or corrected the spelling on invitations. But you get things done. And she would laugh because she knew she was particular. She knew she liked order. Life had taught her that if she did not build structure, chaos would move in and unpack. Marcus was different. Quiet, reserved, a work-and-go-home man. He did not need crowds, did not enjoy attention, did not like being asked to lead. He was the kind of man who could sit in a room for 2 hours and say 11 words. Rachel used to find that peaceful. He did not argue much. He did not chase drama. He paid bills. He went to work. He came home. At the beginning, that felt like stability. She had known enough instability to appreciate a quiet man. But quiet can be peaceful, and quiet can be hiding. The first few months of marriage, Rachel told herself they were adjusting. New routines, new bodies, new schedules. Everybody said the first year took work. But something felt off almost immediately. Marcus was affectionate in public. He would hold her hand at family gatherings and place his palm on her lower back when they walked into restaurants. He kissed her forehead when people were looking. He called her babe around friends. But at night, when the house settled and there was no audience, Marcus disappeared into himself. He would get into bed, plug in his phone, turn to his side, and face the wall. Not sometimes. Most nights. Rachel would lie there beside him, staring at the ceiling, feeling foolish for noticing the shape of his shoulder under the blanket. The first time she brought it up, she tried to keep her voice light. "Are you tired?" "Yeah," he said. "You've been tired a lot lately." "I work, Rachel." "I know you work. I'm just asking." He sighed like the question had weight he did not want to carry. "I'm fine." That became the first wall. "I'm fine." The second wall came later. "It's my diabetes." Rachel did not dismiss that. She read articles, she made doctor's appointments, she changed the way she cooked, she encouraged him to check his numbers, to ask questions, to be honest with the physician. She knew diabetes could affect a man's body. She was not cruel. She was not ignorant. She never expected Marcus to perform like a machine or pretend his health did not matter. But something about his explanation never sat right. Because he did not just struggle physically. He avoided her emotionally. He avoided conversations, avoided eye contact, avoided touch that could lead anywhere. If Rachel rested her head on his chest, his body stiffened. If she rubbed his shoulder, he would shift. If she initiated intimacy, he had a reason ready before she finished the sentence. "I ate too late." "My back hurts." "I have to get up early." "You always pick the wrong time." "You're pressuring me." "Why does everything have to be about that?" That. He called it that. As if she were asking him for something dirty, as if wanting her husband made her needy, shallow, or desperate. Months passed between them. Then, more months. 3 months. 4 months. Sometimes Rachel marked it in her mind without meaning to. She would remember the last time, not because it had been tender or fulfilling, but because it felt like evidence, like proof that she had not imagined being a wife. And even when they were intimate, Marcus was barely there. He would lie on his back, eyes half closed, quiet and detached, like he was waiting for something to be over. There was no hunger in him, no curiosity, no reaching, no laughter, no warmth. Sometimes he could not keep an erection, and Rachel would immediately soften her voice because she did not want to shame him. "It's okay," she would say. But inside, something in her folded, because it did not feel okay. It felt like rejection, wearing a medical excuse. Rachel began inspecting herself in ways she hated. She stood in the mirror and turned sideways. Was it her weight? Her age? Her hair? Had she become too strong? Too opinionated? Too organized? Too difficult to desire? She bought new pajamas once and left the tag on until right before bed. She felt silly even then, like a teenager trying too hard. Marcus glanced at her, said, Those are nice, and rolled over 10 minutes later. Rachel laid awake until 2:13 a.m. She remembered the time because she took a screenshot of it. Not for any reason, just proof. Some pain makes you document strange things. By year 3, Rachel had stopped initiating as much. Not because she stopped wanting her husband, because begging was changing her. Every rejection seemed to reach backward into old wounds she thought she had outgrown. Childhood moments, past relationships, times she had felt overlooked, unwanted, chosen last, tolerated instead of loved. Marcus did not create all of that pain, but he kept stepping on the same bruise. And Rachel hated who she became when the bruise was touched. Sharp, suspicious, cold, then apologetic, then hopeful again, then angry at herself for hoping. One night, after another awkward conversation that went nowhere, she asked the question she had been afraid to ask. "Marcus, are you attracted to me?" He looked offended. "What kind of question is that?" "A real one." "You're my wife." "That's not what I asked." He sat up against the headboard. "I married you, didn't I?" Rachel stared at him. "That is not the same thing." He shook his head and reached for the remote. "Here we go." "No, not here we go. I need to know if you want me." Marcus turned the television on. That was his answer. Not the whole answer, but enough of one to make Rachel feel foolish for asking. After that, suspicion began moving through the house like a draft. Rachel did not want to be that wife, the one checking phones, the one reading into bathroom trips, the one listening for the shower after midnight. But secrecy creates detectives out of people who wanted to be lovers. Marcus protected his phone like it was breathing, face down on the table, in his pocket when he showered, under his pillow when he slept. Rachel noticed, then told herself not to notice, then noticed again. The discovery did not happen dramatically. No thunderstorm, no screaming, no perfect cinematic setup. It was a Tuesday. Marcus had fallen asleep on the couch after dinner, still holding his phone. Rachel was cleaning the kitchen. The phone slipped from his hand and hit the rug. A notification lit the screen. Rachel looked over. She wished she had not. It was not a full image, not even a full message, just enough. Her stomach turned cold. She stood there with a dish towel in her hand and waited for the screen to go dark. Then she walked over, picked up the phone, and for a moment just held it. Marcus woke up. "What are you doing?" he asked too quickly. Rachel looked at him. "What is this?" He sat up and snatched the phone from her hand. Nothing. The speed of his reaction told on him. "Marcus." "It's spam." "Open it." "No." "Open it." "Rachel, I said it's nothing." Her voice dropped. "If it's nothing, open it." He did not. That was the night the first truth came out. He admitted he watched pornography, sometimes. He said it was stress. He said it had nothing to do with her. He said all men struggled with something. He said she was making it bigger than it was. Rachel sat across from him at the kitchen table. "How long?" she asked. He looked away. "On and off." "How long, Marcus?" He rubbed his forehead. "Since I was young." "How young?" He did not answer for a while. Then he said, 10. Rachel's anger paused. She pictured a boy with knees too big for his legs, a school backpack, a lunchbox, no real understanding of what he was seeing. Marcus told her an older cousin showed him videos. At first, it scared him. Then it became curiosity, then comfort, then escape. By the time he was a teenager, it had become a private world. By the time he was a man, it had become a habit so old it felt like part of his personality. Rachel listened, and for a moment, compassion came before pain. That was one of the hardest parts of loving someone with a wound that keeps wounding you. You can understand where it came from and still bleed from what it does. They started counseling 2 weeks later. Rachel wanted help. Marcus said he wanted help too. In the first session, he seemed ashamed. He held her hand in the parking lot afterward and said, "I don't want to lose you." Rachel believed him because she needed to. They created accountability check-ins. Every Thursday night after dinner, they would sit at the kitchen table and talk honestly. No yelling, no accusations, just truth. At first, Rachel came prepared with questions. How was your week? Any urges? Did you watch anything? Did you masturbate? The words felt awkward in her mouth, but she forced herself to say them because healing required honesty. Marcus always had the same answer. No, I'm good. Sometimes he sounded irritated, sometimes proud, sometimes bored. Rachel wanted to trust him. She really did. Trust is not just something you give. Sometimes it is something you keep trying to rebuild because you are afraid of what it means if you stop. Months passed. Nothing changed. The check-ins continued, but Marcus remained distant. He still turned over at night. Still avoided her touch. Still gave excuses. Still treated intimacy like an obligation he resented. Rachel's hope thinned. One Thursday, she did not ask the questions. Marcus noticed. "We not doing check-in?" She looked at him from across the table. "What's the point?" He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you say you're good every week, but we are still living like roommates." Marcus leaned back. "So, because I'm not all over you and go to bed early because I am tired, I'm lying?" Rachel closed her eyes. "I did not say that." "You don't have to." "Marcus, I am so frustrated." He looked away. "I'm here every day." That is not the same as being a husband. He laughed under his breath. "Nothing is ever enough for you." That sentence hit the old bruise. Rachel stood up from the table. "You know what? Maybe divorce would be easier than this." Marcus looked up then. For once, he looked awake. "Wow. Okay. Yes. Wow. Because I am tired of begging my husband to want me. I am tired of feeling awkward in my own bedroom. I am tired of you acting like I'm attacking you when I ask for basic intimacy in a marriage." He stood too. "You think divorce is going to fix you?" Rachel froze. Marcus saw it land and kept going, which was worse. "You've got rejection issues, Rachel. That's not all on me." The room went quiet. Because there was truth in it. Not kindness, but truth. Rachel did have rejection issues. She knew that. Counseling had shown her that some of her reactions came from places Marcus had not created. Her fear of being unwanted was older than their marriage. But Marcus had learned to use that truth like a shield. He could name her wound without taking responsibility for the knife in his hand. Rachel's voice shook. "You don't get to hide behind my pain to avoid yours." Marcus grabbed his keys. "I'm not doing this." He left for 3 hours. When he came back, he slept on the couch. The next morning, Rachel called Ms. Anita and said, "We need help before I say something I can't take back, and do something I may regret." That was how they ended up in the emergency counseling session. 3 chairs, 1 box of tissue, 1 man finally too tired to keep lying. After Marcus admitted he was still watching pornography and masturbating almost every day, Ms. Anita gave the room time to breathe. She did not rush in with a solution. That was one thing Rachel appreciated about her. She understood that not every truth needed immediate management. Some truths needed to sit in the room and show everybody what they had been living with. Rachel turned to Marcus. "So every Thursday, when you told me you were good, I lied," he said. His voice was flat. "And after counseling?" "I really tried, but something keeps drawing me to watch porn." And when I asked if it was me, he swallowed. I didn't know what to say. Rachel nodded slowly. Did you ever think about what it was doing to me? Marcus looked at her then, and for the first time that day, his eyes had water in them. Yes, but not enough to stop. He looked down. No. There it was again. The painful clarity of a simple answer. Ms. Anita asked Marcus a question Rachel had never thought to ask so plainly. What does pornography give you that your marriage does not? Marcus took a long breath. It doesn't require anything from me. Rachel felt that sentence in her chest. Marcus continued, words coming slowly, like he hated each one. I don't have to lead. I don't have to wonder if I'm failing. I don't have to be seen. I don't have to worry about my body not working. I don't have to disappoint anybody. Rachel stared at him. For 6 years, she had thought she was competing with other women, even men. Maybe she was. But she was also competing with escape, with control, with a place where Marcus never had to be vulnerable, never had to be honest, never had to risk being inadequate. Miss Anita nodded. And what does it cost, Rachel? Marcus covered his mouth with his hand. Rachel expected him to say trust or intimacy. Instead, he said, her softness. That almost broke her. Because he was right. Rachel had become harder in that marriage, not because she wanted to be, but because tenderness kept returning injured. Wanting became rejection. She had learned to brace before conversations, learned to expect disappointment, learned to sleep on her side of the bed like there was a painted line down the mattress. Marcus wiped his eyes. I know I hurt you, he said. Rachel waited. But? She asked. He looked confused. There's always a but. He did not deny it. I don't know who I am without it, he said. I have been doing this since I was 10 years old. Rachel nodded. A tear finally slipped down her cheek, but she wiped it quickly. Not because she was ashamed, because she needed to see clearly. For years, Rachel had thought the right threat would wake him up. The right counselor, the right boundary, the right outfit, the right speech, the right version of herself. Softer, quieter, prettier, less demanding, more patient. She had believed, somewhere deep down, that if Marcus understood her pain, he would change. But that day, she realized pain does not automatically produce accountability in the person causing it. Sometimes they see the damage, sometimes they even hate the damage, and still, they choose the habit. That was the truth Rachel had been avoiding. Marcus was not confused anymore. He was choosing. Ms. Anita turned to Rachel. What do you need right now? Rachel almost said, I need my husband back. But the words felt childish once they reached her throat, because the man sitting beside her was her husband. This was not a stranger who had invaded her marriage. This was Marcus. Quiet Marcus. Avoidant Marcus. Wounded Marcus. Lying Marcus. The man who paid bills and took out trash and remembered how she liked her coffee. The man who could sit with her mother during appointments, but could not sit honestly with his own addiction. People are rarely one thing. That is what makes decisions hurt. Rachel looked at him. I need to stop begging you to choose me. Marcus closed his eyes. She turned to Miss Anita. I don't know if I'm leaving the marriage, but I know I'm leaving the pattern. The room was silent. Rachel kept going before fear could stop her. I need separate bedrooms. I need individual counseling for both of us. I need full honesty if there is any attempt to rebuild, not check-ins where I ask questions and he performs answers. Real accountability with somebody other than me. A recovery group. Filters if he chooses them. A plan he leads. not one I manage. Marcus looked overwhelmed. Rachel saw it. For once, she did not rescue him from it. "And if you don't want recovery," she said, "then I need you to say that plainly so I can make decisions based on truth, not hope." Marcus did not answer. The first night Rachel slept in the guest room, she expected to feel destroyed. The room was small, with a lamp that flickered if the cord bent the wrong way. There was a stack of books on the dresser and a blanket her aunt had made years earlier. Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, in an old t-shirt, and listened to Marcus moving around in the other room. Before she turned off the lamp, Rachel sat there with her grandmother's old words moving through her mind. "When you don't know what else to do, pray." Rachel had always heard that, but nobody had ever told her what prayer sounded like when your heart was angry, embarrassed, and tired. So she did not dress it up. She just whispered the truth. "I'm hurt. I'm confused. I don't want to hate him. I don't want to lose myself. Help me not make a decision from fear." That was all she had. But somehow, it was enough for that night. For years, the sound of him turning away had made her feel rejected. That night, the closed door felt like a boundary. Not revenge, not punishment. She cried then. Not the kind of crying that begged Marcus to come fix it. This was different. This was the kind of crying that made room for Rachel to hear herself again. Somewhere between the tears, the prayer, and the silence, she felt a small kind of peace, not permission to ignore the truth, but strength to face it without falling apart. Not because she knew what came next, but because she finally admitted what had already happened. The marriage she wanted was not the marriage she had. The man she loved was not ready to become the man he kept promising to be. And Rachel, strong Rachel, organized Rachel, fix everything Rachel, had to face something she could not schedule, manage, or outwork. Healing was not control. It was truth. Over the next few weeks, she stopped asking Marcus if he had watched anything. That may sound small, but for Rachel, it felt like putting down a job she had never applied for. She stopped monitoring his moods, stopped dressing for a reaction, stopped lying beside him hoping he would suddenly roll over and become honest. She kept going to individual counseling and started saying things out loud that made her uncomfortable. Some weeks, counseling felt like pulling splinters out of places she had learned not to touch. Rachel talked about rejection, control, fear, anger, and the quiet shame of wanting love from someone who kept withholding it. For the first time, she was not just asking, "Why won't Marcus change?" She was also asking, "Why do I keep abandoning myself while I wait for him to?" I confuse being chosen with being safe. I use productivity to avoid grief. I want to support him, but I also want him to feel the consequences. I'm angry that his childhood trauma became my marital loneliness. Her counselor did not flinch. Rachel fell silent. After a long silence, Rachel looked down at her hands and said softly, "I think I need to pray. I just don't really know how." Her counselor sat with her in the quiet for a moment. "Rachel, maybe prayer does not have to sound perfect," she said. "Maybe it can just sound honest. Maybe surrender is simply admitting that what you are carrying has become too heavy for your heart, your mind, and your emotions to manage alone." Rachel sat with that for a moment. So that night, she sat on the edge of the guest room bed and whispered, "Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm staying. I don't know if I'm leaving. I don't even know if I'm praying right. But I need help." No answer dropped from the ceiling, but something in her breathing slowed. Rachel did not feel strong because everything was fixed. She felt strong because she was no longer carrying the pain by herself. She surrendered it. But surrender was not the same as resolution, because Marcus still had a truth to face, and Rachel was about to learn whether confession was enough or whether real change would cost him more than he wanted to give.